Frack on. Welcome to the episode of Frack the Canon. We'll be talking about Invincible. So, Tyler, this was your idea. You start us off, good sir. About what is Invincible?
Invincible is a Robert Kirkman comic, and apologize to our audience. I realize my green screen has failed. Um, but it's a Robert Kirkman comic. Came out in the early 2000s that is heavily influenced by comics and anime. And it's kind of a subversion of expectations on what a superhero comic is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Amazon's number one hit show and has been for weeks, and it has created tens of thousands of memes overnight thanks to the season finale of the show. That's my nutshell for you.
Yeah, it is. CJ, what were your thoughts about it? About the show?
Um, I really liked Invincible a whole lot. I remember hearing about it like back when I was first getting into comics, like which was when Renee and I went to film school. Take a shot. Um, but no, yeah, back when I was first getting into comics, I remember like hearing about it, but I never really got into it. And then when I heard it was going to be a show, I actively decided not to read anything because I was like, okay, well, I don't want to spoil anything. You know what I mean? Like, let me just check the show out. So I went in completely blind, not knowing anything kind of plot wise or plot wise about it. And yeah, I liked it a lot. I think. I mean, it's just a solid series. I think what it really reminded me of is like, in a, it's like it reminded me of an adult version of the Saturday morning cartoons I used to watch. That's like really what it like. It was like I was watching Spider-Man, the '90s series. You know what I mean? Like just it had aged with me though. You know what I mean? Like it was like, and that's what it really felt like, and that's one of the reasons why I liked it a lot because I liked I was a Saturday morning cartoons kid. You know what I mean? Like I liked that element. I liked that way of storytelling, and this really pulled it off. It was like an adult version of that. You know.
Kenny?
Um, yeah, I want to say I first heard about it. I was reading Kick-Ass, and somebody said, "Oh, if you like that, check out Invincible." It's obviously not the same sort of concept, but it's a different take on the traditional story hero story that we're used to getting. Superman swoops in, saves the day. You don't hear about all the civilians on the train that he stopped in a heartbeat just to save a child from the railroad tracks. Um, and this gives you a little bit more of that, all while dealing with, the teenage, how do I balance high school and my relationship, and oh, now I'm a superhero. Um, it's a little more fun to it than that. I decided to wait until the show was completely done with its first season so I could just binge through it in a day. I think that is kind of the optimal way to view this, because they don't set up like real cliffhangers. Like if I was watching it week to week, I think I would have dropped off a little bit. But being able to binge it all in one sitting made it like way more enjoyable to me.
Yeah. So, okay. So, what I heard first about, I heard the comic book when I was reading comics. It came out like late, early, like 2000, 2004, around the time I went to film school. Take a shot. Um, and I didn't know who Robert Kirkman was until I read his Ultimate X-Men run, and I was not a fan of what he did. So I'm like, frack this guy. I'm not reading anything else he does. I hated what he did with the X-Men. I am that petty. CJ can attest to this. um, but I watched Walking Dead. I'm like, all right, it's kind of cool. I watched the cartoon because you guys were talking to me. I should check it out. I watched it. I'm like, I thought it was okay. It was. Here's the thing: if I was a kid and I saw this, it would have been dope. It would have been amazing. But I was like, all right, it's okay. It's cool runnings. I was not impressed. I'll tell you right now, I was not impressed by this show. I'm like, I kind of seen that before. CJ, you want to say something?
I'm just laughing at some of the stuff you're saying, but I will chime in and just say like I think there's something to what you're saying as well as to what Kenny just said before you, which I didn't really think about when I was watching it, but like it was true. He was saying like he binged it and he feels like it's the optimal way, and as he was saying, I'm like, yeah, no, actually, it really is because of what he said. It doesn't really have cliffhangers and it you might kind of drop off, which I did. Like, you know what I mean? Like I watched like an episode here and there. I was meandering through this series at like a leisurely pace. And I didn't really find that to be offensive. in any way, but because I was still interested in watching it, but I didn't feel the pull through the series like say like earlier this year, like WandaVision pulled me through that series once it kind of had its hooks in me. This had its hooks in me, but like there wasn't anything that kind of keep me back other than just all right, well, you know what else is
It
going
felt
on?
like you could kind of pick it up whenever, but like if you missed an episode of WandaVision, you were behind, like, you know, with the social norms,
I
I
will say
guess.
that I did like about that about Invincible that you could kind of watch it whenever. And
Yeah.
because I love that it was episodic. I mean, it's kind of cool. It's episodic. It's not like one big story arc, which was a throwback to the old school, you know, cartoon, the comic books. I mean, each show, each or episode, or episode, you don't have to pick everything up to stay up to date, which I enjoyed. I did find that refreshing. But again, I'm like, I wasn't really impressed too by what I saw. Like, I mean, the only thing that did make me laugh, and Tyler posted it, so I asked him to send me what he was talking about, was Alan the Alien, voiced by Seth Rogen. That
Yeah.
dude was hilarious. I like that. I like the concept of like, all right, are you worthy enough to protect the planet? We're gonna test you.
All right. I'm an evaluation officer for the Coalition of Planets. I drop by little dirt balls like yours to make sure there's someone capable of defending them against, you know, planet conquering monsters, things of that nature.
I literally have no idea what any of that means.
Tyler, since,
Yeah.
since this is your topic, and I stole, I'm sorry. So you want to touch on that a little bit more?
Oh, who you reaching out to?
You, Tyler.
Oh, me. Yes.
I'm the alien.
Well, before I get into Alan Alien, I must address some things that have been said. First off, Cool Runnings is a classic and is excellent. Always a good time. And maybe I'm just a little kid because although there were some terrible episodes, in my opinion, Invincible had me hooked, but might be because I've read a lot of the comic. I don't want to spoil.
That's a good point because none of us three.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, Kenny read it.
No,
you
I didn't read it.
So there we
No.
go. Yeah. So us three haven't read it. So maybe that's why you were more engaged than we were.
Yeah. So I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm going to be very careful with my language. But what this show actually did really well is like what happened in episode 1 happens in like the 4th issue. So if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, hurry up and watch it. It's excellent. It's a good time. It is meh in kind of the middle, but it even if you're casually watching, there are parts which will draw you in and have your eyes glued to the screen for like 10 minutes, and that's worth the price of admission. But you mentioned Alan the Alien. I'll preface this entire thing by saying I brought up my Goku for a good reason. A lot of new fans are saying that Invincible is like, oh, it's like Dragon Ball Z, except if like Goku didn't hit his head and then he had to raise his son. One thing I'll say about that quickly, there's a reason why Viltrumites are having kids. You'll learn that in the comics. And then about Alan the Aliens, played by Seth Rogen, who, by the way, is one of this huge, amazing cast, which maybe we can talk about a bit later.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Really big budget cast.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because I have some comments about that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well,
come on. Good. Sorry,
Alan the Alien is, so people say, oh, Viltrumites are like Saiyans. So actually, no, Alan the Alien's race is way more like Saiyans than Viltrumites are.
So hold on, before you go on,
yeah.
We're talking about the show. That's not comic book right now. Let's stick to the show. Let's talk about booking another one. Does that make sense? Because we don't have that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Cool.
I will just say, if the show continues to follow comics as closely as they have been, Alan the Alien will be a much more reoccurring character in the future.
Ooh, interesting.
So, yeah. So we've never seen a voice for Alan the Alien prior to the comic. Prior to the show. So Alan the Alien being voiced by Seth Rogen is fantastic and somewhat of a subversion of expectations. Just saying.
Okay, so Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, I just want to jump on like some of the stuff that was said, like in the case of what he was talking about, like things that glue your eyes. I like every episode. I felt like I was blown away conceptually by something that the series brought up.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar.
Yeah, there was like a concept that they brought up that I hadn't thought of, and that I thought was just so freaking cool. Like, okay, episode 2, I'm gonna say specifically the bad guys in episode 2. The idea of a time displaced other dimension. Their time moves way faster than ours, and then this enemy who like freaking they come over, they try to invade, and we beat them, and they spend like decades trying to
Yep.
freaking perfect what happened wrong, and then they come back, but for us it's like the next day. Like an enemy like that is like, I thought that was so cool. Like I was like, that is such a crazy and cool concept that like I had never thought of before, and like was awesome. And it's paired with, you guys know I love my freaking action. But this is like some of the best like American animated action I've seen, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. They didn't hold back either. To piggyback off of that, like every episode has like introduces an idea or a concept that you might not have thought of yourself. Every episode as well has at least one or two like scenes visually that are pretty stunning and memorable. Um, like definitely end of the first episode. I know I said the cliffhanger thing. That episode has probably the only cliffhanger. Understandably why, right at the end there, and it's an awesome 4 or 5 minute scene. The second episode, like you're talking about, that whole battle, and then they introduced their kind of version of the, not Teen Titans, I'm blanking on the name, but the young teenage superhero group and like how their powers kind of work together in their whole team. Yeah.
But let's talk about the cast, because here I something I told CJ. I'm like by episode 1 or 2, I'm like the acting did not impress me. I was not impressed by the voice cast. By their act, I was impressed by the cast, but not by their voice acting talent. I'm like, who are these guys who are like? To me, it was very grinding. It was very like, why? Are they, when they had Mark Hamill, when they had Clancy Brown, there was someone else I'm forgetting too. When they had Kevin Richards, I'm like, these guys are voice acting. Did anyone find any issues with the voice acting, or was it just me?
let me take on that for a second, because what you're talking about is like a common issue that I have with like and I it if it bothered me in this one, it was only slightly, and like only for like maybe episode 1, you know what I mean? Like after that I either got used to it or they got better. But what you're describing is like, I have an issue as well with like, it comes around with like bigger budget Hollywood like animations, and it's usually when they just kind of hire names to fill roles, and those names don't typically do a lot, you know what I mean? They're not used to doing voice acting like some of the, like you mentioned, like Clancy Brown, like Mark Hamill, who are like really doing it up because they're used to it and because they do it all the time, you know what I mean? Like, so they're very talented and we know them for being very talented, but usually like the big names that they hire are really just kind of being themselves, you know what I mean? Look at a lot of Disney movies. Hercules, James Woods, that's James Woods, you know what I mean? Like that's James Woods, that's not him trying to be a Hades, he's just
Yeah,
being,
but
you
but
know
he
what I mean?
nailed
Like
it.
freaking, like most of that, you know what I mean? There's these
Yeah.
big Hollywood cast, they're just doing that, and like that's a common, what you're saying. Like, yeah, I do kind of have that issue with that because they just don't. It's like they don't try. But in this series, like by the end, I definitely didn't have that problem like that when Mark Grayson's going off on his dad, like in the final episode, you know what I mean? Like about like after he tells him how he feels about his mom, you know what I mean? And like, and he's going off on that. Like, I felt that, you know what I mean? Like, that was some damn good acting there.
I do love your mother, but she's more like a pet to me.
A pet?
This is the only way, Mark.
Don't touch me.
Calm down.
I will not calm down. This is insane. What do you think is gonna happen? That I'm gonna go enslave my friends for a bunch of aliens I've never met?
You know what I
Yes,
mean?
all right. So that scene right there, that is an amazing. That was like, I think like where I was totally in that scene. That was the one scene I'm like, oh yeah, you guys are acting now. Now I believe these characters. When he pretty much called her a pet, I'm like, that is freaking cold. That
Yeah.
is cold. So since you're the invisible guy, Tyler, what were your thoughts on that?
I quickly want to address the voice acting. I agree with CJ, some of which were gimmicky. For example, each actor who plays someone in the Guardians of the Globe, they were all from The Walking Dead. Every one of them, and that obviously is a gimmick thanks to Robert Kirkman, creator of Walking Dead. But there were some nice surprises, like Lauren Cohen, who plays Maggie in Walking Dead, played Warrior Woman, and she did a great job, I thought. There were some obviously great standout actors in it. So there was like a huge contrast of like great voice acting with like very mediocre voice acting. So just to highlight great voice acting, J.K. Simmons and Stephen Ewan carry this show, as exemplified by the scene aforementioned. Think Mark.
Why did you make me do this? You're fighting so you can watch everyone around you die. Think, Mark. You'll outlast every fragile, insignificant being on this planet. You'll live to see this world crumble to dust and blow away. Everyone and everything you know will be gone.
So the Think Mark scene is like the whole reason I'm doing this episode. Honestly, I've wanted to do this episode. It's cinematic masterclass in just over-the-top action, as well as like what has been built up to through the whole series. Somewhat I want to kind of shout out, it's kind of similar to like what I think Zack Snyder was trying in Batman v Superman, like, Martha, like, what do you say her name? But no, it's way better done, because you have the parallel of Nolan trying to be a Viltrumite and a human, as well as trying to be a superhero and a dad, with Mark trying to be human and a superhero. And then you have the parallel of like Nolan lying about what has been going on, to Mark's blind faith in his father, and Mark's discovery of his powers and trying to have this coming of age story. And then the conflict comes with like Nolan trying to teach Mark how to be him. It's something like the eternal reoccurring theme in literature is like fatherhood with coming of age. And it was done so beautifully. I know, René, you mentioned the line, she was just a pet to me. And that line really hurt me, because it's like the whole series you think like they're in love, they have chemistry. But the one that actually broke my heart even more is when Mark has had his teeth knocked out by Nolan, and Nolan sees his teeth missing, and it reminds him of when he was a kid Mark was a kid playing baseball, and then Mark stops and he's like, this is my son. And then he gets angry, and he says, does what any angry father may do, is blame his child for his mistake of getting too angry. When Nolan says to Mark, everyone you know will die, what will you have? What will you have when everyone you know will die? All these people you're trying to protect, what will you have? And Mark says, I'll have you, Dad. I'll have you. When I heard that, my heart was like, oh. And then, of course, Nolan flies off into space to go have future adventures, which we will hear about soon. All that to be said, Think Mark, well memed, but it draws a lot of attention to what actually happened in the show, which I think is the crescendo, everything the series has been building up to. Yeah, oh my gosh, I've rewatched that episode now like 5 times.
Now that's the only 7 and 8 are the only 2 eps that I feel like are kind of like clip. That is that one that pulled me through. Like I kind of meandered through most of the series, but 7 drew me directly to 8, because I didn't watch 7 as it came out. Like I just I waited till 8 was done, and I don't even know if I watched it that same week. But like I have watched when I started with 7, I was like, oh well shit, I gotta watch 8 now. You know what I mean? But like freaking a phrase that Tyler used earlier worth the price of admission. There's one thing that is worth the price of admission. It is in episode 8, and it is when Omni-Man punches Invincible across the entire country. I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are. I don't know where they end up. But I know he punches him and he's in one ecosystem. And when he flies, he's in a completely different biome. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how far he flew, but that was the craziest scene I have ever seen, followed by the craziest scene I've ever seen. And then another craziest scene I'd ever seen. That was craziness. But like that, like if you could have seen like how far down my jaw dropped when he punches him and like he flies and he's just like causing mass destruction, like just trying to stop falling. You know what I mean? Like it's just, that was nuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was crazy nuts. But with that, I'm gonna have to sign out, guys. Have a good rest of the episode.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, CJ.
So with that, what was you guys' favorite scene? Kenny, what's that with you?
Mine was, and I want to see more of this character in season 2. Battle Beast.
Who's next?
Hello, boy.
So Invincible goes up and he's helping out one of the supposed villain characters. He's been pitched to us as a villain, and then you sort of get some of his background and basically go up to a tower and then trying to take down like a Kingpin like character. Well, Kingpin character has outsmarted everybody and has these heroes for hire sort of type villains. And Battle Beast shows up and just puts a whooping on Invincible like no other. And I wanted more of that character. I wanted to learn more about that character because it seems like he's from a different planet or a different dimension or something.
Right.
And like he just utterly lays into Invincible's chest. And I said this when I first started watching the show, or when he first came up with his name, that there's that scene where he goes, I'm going to call myself, and then they keep doing that cut gimmick before he says Invincible, which I thought was cool because that's the opening title card. But if you call yourself Invincible, you're going to draw a lot of heat from villains who want to put that name to the test. And through the entire show, sure enough, like there's a couple moments where Mark gets to near death. They test the name Invincible on him quite a few times. Battle Beast is one of the characters that does it. And so that was the scene that kind of pushed me to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to finish the show for sure.
What about you, Tyler? What was your favorite?
My honestly, my favorite scene, because I've rewatched it so many times, is the Think Mark Think scene, but not the obviously the beating part. The beating part's a huge, nice bonus of him flying across the world and into Everest and through a cruise ship and everything. But you know, the emotional stakes of it draws me in, specifically with Nolan's wife reacting to Nolan saying all these insensitive things to humanity, and kind of the wolf being exposed under the sheep's clothing, and that I thought was an extra layer, which was well established. But my other favorite scene, I think deserves a shout out, is when Omni-Man destroys an entire planet.
You don't seem to understand. Earth isn't yours to conquer.
That scene was just so cool. It was like the first time we kind of get like how much of a freaking badass Nolan is. And makes me really excited to see how on earth are we going to find anybody able to fight Omni-Man and actually win in these future seasons. I know I've seen it in the comics, but like I want to see it animated.
All right, well, I have nothing else. Any final comments, any final thoughts before we frack off?
I say the show's definitely worth a viewing. it's not a long watch by any means. It took me half a day maybe. Binge it, and then if like season 2's for sure coming. They've basically all but like committed. Actually, didn't they commit to 2 and 3?
Yes, sir.
Yep. So we're gonna get more of it. I'm excited to learn more and see more of the characters and watch the universe kind of grow.
So I will just say that if the show follows the comics as closely as they have been thus far, the show will only be getting much better from here, and I'm really, really, really excited for more, and stoked not only that we have season 2, but also season 3 already confirmed, and that just shows that the creative team has a plan, and that's really encouraging.
All right.
Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Kenny. And thank you, CG, who has just left, for joining us. We'll see you same fracking time, same fracking channel. Frack off.